Hi guys, welcome to Personal Psych. Quincy's going to help us out with this one. Hi buddy. So, I want to talk to you a little bit about needs assessment. I call it the holy trinity of needs assessment: program design, program evaluation. Back when I was going to Merrillhurst College, when I was working at the paper mill, Merrillhurst was a private school, Lake Oswego, Oregon. That's about 20 minutes south of Portland. It was a great college for working professionals. Classes were on the weekends, and most of the courses that I took were taught by actual consultants, and this is where I give props to Dr. Lynn Bales. I love Dr. Bales. She was a bomb. I took organizational communication with her, and then I enjoyed that course so much, and we got along so well that I took her three-course sequence of needs assessment, program design, and program evaluation. So now I'm going to give you just a little slice of it, a handful of slides here. This shortest lecture I probably ever do is a dozen slides. But really, it's about doing things and understanding what we're doing and why we're doing them, and if doing them is even necessary. So let's head on through the Holy Trinity here. Consider, that it's insanely efficient, wasteful, demotivating to engage in activities that don't need to be done in the first place. And I'll bet that triggered the notion of needs assessment in your mind. Do we need to do this? Basic question. So, and that leads to a second question, which is a more complex question. Do we need to do this? I don't know. How can we find out? And that's the process of needs assessment. So this is a very, very simple philosophy. It's embodied in this line of inquiry. The first question is there a problem? Is there an opportunity? One or the other, right? Or both. How should it be addressed? And was the solution appropriate and useful? And that embodies the whole process. So let's do the needs assessment. Is there a need? No, really, that's a simple question. And someone says, we need to hire X number of people, and you're the human resources professional, and you say, okay, you say we need to hire. What is the nature of the need? Is there a need? How many people do we need to hire, right? What qualifications do those people need to have? So we can see that the word need is repeated again and again in these questions, but let us not engage in designing a massive hiring process if there's no need to hire people, right? And also, it's kind of like, what do we need to do? Interestingly, when I was hired at Boise Cascade, they wanted to go at the converting facility where I first worked in Salem, Oregon. They wanted to go from 3 shifts to 4 shifts. And they say, there's a business need, that is, we can cut and sell enough paper to require a 4th shift, right? So they establish the business need, and then they say, so we need to add a 4th shift. That's 15 more people we have to hire at one time, and that's a pretty significant hiring push when you're talking only 100 hourly employees. To add another 15 is a huge increase. It's the easy math, 15% increase. So you need to establish the need, right? How do we know? And how do we know becomes the big part of it. So what is needed? How do we know? Who do we talk to find out? What data do we need to demonstrate that there is a need? How do we verify the existing data that points to that need? That is it good data or is it bad data? And it's, possible there's bad data, right? If the hiring, if some manager somewhere just said, I need more people, and you say, well, based on what? Right? You put their feet to the fire and you have them present data. Do we need to conduct our own studies? That is, let's suppose that there is no study that's designed to answer this question of need, then do we need to design our own? And the good thing is most of us are psychology majors, and we're all about developing measures. So this is a skill that we pick up along the way. And then when we start gathering our data, how do we integrate that data to create a meaningful story? So let's suppose we establish, and we're going to talk through this class about different needs. Do we need to hire X number of people? Do we need to hire people with existing skills, or do we need to hire people with the ability to be trained, right? What do we need? What is the best option? So that's really what need assessment gets at. Now, once we've developed and established that there is in fact a need, then we have to design a program, and this is step 2, design the program to meet that need. Right? So as we're developing the program, notice the needs assessment is always, we always go back to it and say, do the results of the need assessment, are we addressing everything in the program? Are we addressing all the needs that were discovered in the needs assessment? So, how do we move our system in the desired direction? Has anything like this ever been attempted before, and how did it work? So did we ever have a big hiring push in the company before? How did that work out? How did we manage it? We might be able to very simply take what was done before, if we know it was successful, and it seems like it will apply in this context. With very little extra work or very little tweaking, we might be able to use an existing system. Or we may need to develop a new one, right? Who do we need to involve? And this is in terms of stakeholders then. What stakeholders are important in sharing their voice for this process? Now, if we're changing things up, then how will they potentially react? For example, when we were at the, when I was at the paper mill, the best job that you could get, the best hourly job you could get at Salem Converting was arguably quality control inspector. Because you're kind of your own boss, you just floated around the mill, right? And you just did spot checks on quality and all the processes. And it's kind of a cool job, right? And you really are your own boss. And seniority determined who would get positions. So if a position opened up and you were the most senior person who expressed an interest, then the position was yours, right? That's how the union worked there, for better or for worse, right? So what you have is everyone wants to be the 4 QC and the quality control inspectors, so it's all the 4 oldest guys because they have the greatest level of seniority and they're able to bid and win those jobs. Well, the thing is, my boss, Pete, once we started on our total quality transformation and we started all of us hourly workers being responsible for our own quality measurements, it kind of argued against the need for independent quality control inspectors. So Pete, said, well, we need to eliminate the quality control inspectors because it just has become a waste of money. We have the hourly people doing that and doing it just as well. What do you do? Well, how are people going to react? And Pete thought, people are going to react really negatively if we just eliminate these 4 jobs. So we look, do we need to eliminate these jobs? You kind of do a mini needs assessment and say, actually, the most junior of these 4 quality control inspectors will be retiring within a year and a half. Do we need to, in fact, eliminate their jobs and push them into new, lower level jobs? No, we don't. We can just allow them to retire out and not replace them. But then the big question is, okay, so the people who are in line for those jobs, who've been anticipating those jobs, how will they react to those jobs going away? Well, I mean, it's less of an impact if you just say, well, those jobs don't exist anymore. I'm sorry you're planning on that, but at least we're not tossing anyone out of their existing jobs. Right? Who do we involve? How will they potentially react? Always important questions if you value people. Right? What resources will likely be required to operate this program? Do we need training? Do we need safety training? Do we need diversity training, right? These are programs. What is the need? How can we demonstrate the need, right? And then what resources will likely be required to develop a program to address those needs? Now, specifically in this class, when we ask what resources are necessary, that is, if we need to hire 3 new people, what resources are necessary to pull that off? Okay. So further questions on program and design, what are the potential costs and benefits? And we better make a list of both. That is, these are the benefits we expect to accrue, but these are the costs that we may in fact incur. So we want to go with both eyes open, and we want to be very careful about these cost-benefit analyses. What are the potential unanticipated consequences? A lot of people don't like to think about this. They say, I'm developing a program to make this happen. But what else might be the result of that program? What could possibly go wrong? I always hated it when my boss would ask me that. What could possibly go wrong? Well, You better have a long list of what could possibly go wrong and begin to start developing plans for the most likely things that could go wrong. Right? That's the contingency plans that's stated there. What measures are going to be needed to assess our progress or our success with this newly designed program? Note that why do I have statements about evaluation in the program design section? Because as you're designing the program, you build the evaluation components into the program as you're designing it, right? So you're ready to go with that. So the program then evaluation, fundamental to program evaluation is building evaluations into the program as early as possible. How will we know if the program is generating the desired results? That is, what do we intend to measure and how will we measure? Something we should know in advance, right? So what measures can we employ? Do they already exist? If they already exist, then we don't have to create our own. But if they don't, then we have to create our own. And we might then be forced into a situation where we say, what is this most similar to that I know about? And how can I modify what exists rather than maybe just taking it as it is? Okay? When using multiple measures, then we might ask the question, if the program is working and I'm measuring using these three different measures, what do I expect the relationship of those three measures to be to each other? That is, what correlations do I anticipate observing? And if I don't observe those correlations during the evaluation process, then I got to kind of work backwards and say, why did we not observe the correlations between measures that we expected? Okay? And then finally, what is the basis of our tests? Who, what, when, where, under what conditions will the testing be done? And as we talk later in the course, more specifically about testing, we see how important these questions are to ensure that our tests are both reliable and valid. And we have lectures on those two terms specifically. So further on program evaluation, how much have we spent? Are we on budget? And again, I will remind you that working in this area, many of you will have hiring budgets, right? And this budget will cover your advertising for candidates. It will cover your testing materials. It will cover travel. It will cover money to pay the interviewers, especially if you're using hourly people and you have to pay them overtime, right? So are we on budget? And this is another system of evaluation. Not only do we evaluate the success of the program, but we need to be able to evaluate our conformance to the budget for the program. We also need to evaluate are we conforming to the perceived schedule? Are we willing to endure any unforeseen consequences, right? And then finally, are our measures sufficient, or did we leave something out and we can't really speak to the results because we didn't measure some aspect of it? Ideally, we take some time integrating the needs assessment, the program design, and the program evaluation so that we do a high-quality job on it. You may find that when you're a human resources professional, you're often pushed to do things more quickly than you like. To the extent that you can put on the brakes and become an advocate of these ideas, to the extent that not only can you use them, but you can explain them to others so that they understand the importance of kind of the meticulous nature of moving through these processes. What does it all mean? Ideally, 3 teams at a minimum carry out the process. So we have a team that does the needs assessment, and then we have a separate team that designs the program, and yet a different team that conducts the evaluation. That way there's no role conflict, and if it's my idea, I say, hey, we need this, and I'm going to design this program, and look how well this worked, and I'm the sole voice. There's a lot of powerful forces that could cause me to ignore maybe negative consequences or less than optimal outcomes, right? Because it's my baby, and because it's my baby, I look at it differently than a detached or an objective observer might. So organizational leaders then function as the overseer of this process, right, and coordinate then those 3 teams that I've suggested. Big question is, how long should we persist? And this is something that we should build into the program design. That we're going to operate it for this long, And we expect over this period of time, at this cost, that we will have attained these outcomes. And if we don't, then we have to step back and start wondering why we weren't successful along those guidelines, and what are we going to do about it. And that is, whether a project continues or not should not be up to the originator of the project, but should be up to some third party who's objective about the actual success. And this is all based on what, right? So, or based on what are we going to continue, terminate, and then if applied in a new location or domain, we say, hey, look, we had this great hiring process, this program for hiring, or we developed this amazing training program that we used at facility A. Will it be successful at facility B? And the question is, how do we know it will? What are the differences? What are the similarities? And how might they affect the efficacy of that program? That's it, guys. It really is super simple, and I don't understand why we don't adhere to this more closely. Do we need it? How do we know? And that's the most fundamental and the most basic question, right? So that's it for the Holy Trinity of needs assessment, program design, and program evaluation. I think Dr. Bales would be cracking up right now. She said, Mark, you talked about that for what, 16 minutes? You know, when I had 3 courses in that. Now, the nuts and bolts of doing it, right, require each one of these to be a separate course, if you will. But as an overview, just kind of a general philosophical approach. If we're going to do something, the first question is, do we really need to do this? And how do we know? Anyway, that's it for you guys. No assignment connected to this one. So I'll see you later.